welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be sharing a new Ikea hack. So this time I'm using the Ikea Besta units to create a long desk for two people. So in our home we don't actually have a separate office room. Our office space is in our dining room, so we have sort of a dining room slash office. So we wanted to create something that fits seamlessly within the room, wasn't too much of an eyesore and had lots of storage so it didn't look too cluttered. So let me jump right in and show you what the room was like before. So as you can see, we've got our dining table in the middle of the room, and then running down the right hand side we have a space for our desk. So we started with a simple Ikea desk, but it was a little bit too deep for the space. It could only seat one person, and as you can see we've got quite a bit of wasted space on either side. So we wanted to create something that fit quite seamlessly and filled this entire space, which is 3.2 meters long. To have something custom made turned out to be really quite expensive, so we decided to head to Ikea and see what we could do. So to help it blend into the room, we decided to paint the wall and the main units the same colour. So we went with Dulux Denim Drift and started by painting the wall. So next up we built the units. We went for the Besta units that are 60 centimetres by 64 centimetres by 40 centimetres. So we put them together and we used the stub arc legs to make them a nice height for a desk. So at this stage we didn't attach the doors because we wanted to make a bit more funky effect on the front of the doors, something a little bit farmhousey but not too in your face. So we bought some strip wood and cut it into 4 pieces, the same length as the sides and the top and the bottom of the door. We then mitered the edges using the miter saw to create a nice finish and glued them directly to the door using wood glue. We clamped them and left them overnight to make sure it dried nicely. Then for this next step, unfortunately, I managed to corrupt my memory card, so I've lost a little bit of footage, but it's quite similar to the previous step, so I'll just talk you through it on the completed unit. So using the same strip wood, we just rested it on top and marked where each of the edges would be in a diagonal position. You then use the miter saw again to cut the edges and cut 2 sort of cuts on each end of the wood to create a point that fits nicely in the door. And then we did this again in the other direction, but this time just had to cut it in the middle to fit around the first piece and attach these in exactly the same way with wood glue and clamping overnight. So the next step was to paint them. So I've done plenty of videos showing you how I paint Ikea furniture. So look at my Ikea hacks playlist if you want to see some of those. But I usually give it a light sand, use a coat of primer and then put 2 coats of my paint on. So again, I painted these in Dulux Denim Drift. So to cover our space, which is 3.2 meters, we needed 3 of these Besta units. So we did this 3 times, and that allowed us to have 1 at either end, 1 in the middle, and have 2 nice sized seating spaces. Next up we moved on to the top. So we couldn't find a piece of wood that was long enough to cover the full distance, so we ordered 2 kitchen countertops in oak. This was probably the most expensive part of the project because we did want to go with the oak wood, but you could do it a lot cheaper if you use something like pine or some reclaimed scaffold boards maybe, so there is some ways to save money on this kind of project. They were a little bit deeper than we wanted, so first we had to cut a long strip off of each side of the countertops. Our walls on each end of the desk weren't completely square. We had little bits of cutout, which I presume were boxed in for piping and things like that. So we needed to cut a couple of little notches out on either side. So we did this using a handsaw. So next we wanted to add some cable holes to make sure it's nice and tidy and everything tucked nicely down the back of the desk. So we drew around a glass to create a semicircle and then cut this out using our router. Now if you don't have a router, you could obviously use a jigsaw or a scribing saw and do this by hand. The wood was really quite smooth, but we decided to give it just a light sand with a high grit sandpaper. So we used 180 grit sandpaper all the way over the top and just lightly around the edges just to smooth them off. Finally, we wanted to give them a little bit of treatment because we didn't want them to stain or anything, and you've always got a cup of tea next to your computer. So we decided to use Ronzil Light Oak Interior Varnish, and we painted 2 coats of this onto the desks. We didn't bother doing the underside of the tops, just the top and edges. And then finally it was ready to put together, so we thought we'd have to screw the top onto the units, but actually when we placed it on there they were quite heavy and they managed to hold it in place really nicely. It's really quite difficult to move it. So we didn't bother screwing them on, we just rested them on top of the units, and then that was the project complete. as you can see, here's the finished desk. It fills the space nicely and I think it blends into the room quite well. It's not too much of an eyesore, and with all the Besta units it means we've got plenty of storage underneath, so we don't have lots of paper, craft supplies, cables all out on the top of the desk. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more IKEA hacks that I've done, head over to my playlist because I've got a nice long playlist of IKEA hacks. And remember to hit the big red subscribe button if you want to see more of the work that we're doing around our home. I'll see you on the next one. Bye!